Welcome, I'm your host, Leigh Brunellen, traditional naturopath, healer, whole food expert, here with the Natural Health Clinic's live presentation. So this evening, we are going to be discussing the modern cause of disease. So pretty much since man's walked the earth, there's been one major cause of disease, and that is a disease of deficiency, meaning either they didn't have any food, which is pretty deficient, or the food that they did have, that man did have, did not contain all of the nutrients that were necessary for them to have optimal health. So not only the amount of nutrients that they would need to not quite have disease, but the optimal amount of nutrients so that they would have vibrant health, vitality, etc. So that's what we've been dealing with for the majority of time. But now, in this modern age, and I would say for the last century and a half, 150 years, there is a new cause of disease. What is that cause? That is toxins. And now, currently, there are so many toxins that there's no doubt that has become a primary cause of chronic disease and degeneration in this modern age of civilization. So this evening, we're going to be talking about what we can do to mitigate the effects of that toxic exposure on our body. Now, this time of year, many people have New Year's resolutions, of which they never, of course, typically complete, and they have the same New Year's resolutions year after year, and not ever attaining the goals that they set. One of those New Year's resolutions is, they're going to exercise, or they're going to get healthy, maybe they're going to do some kind of a cleanse or purification program or detoxification or whatever the case may be. To some extent this evening, we're going to be discussing real detoxification. Now, most of what you hear, even from natural health professionals, those types of detoxifications, cleanses, purification programs end up not being highly effective. They may be effective in helping you lose weight. You may feel better for a period of time. But overall, they are not as effective as what true cleansing is. So what is true cleansing? What is a true detoxification? Well, it is on the cellular level. Just let that sink in for a moment. So our entire body is made up of cells. Some of the best purification programs out there, they work on 7 different systems. All right. So what makes those systems? Cells. But it only helps those 7 systems. Maybe the lymphatic, the bloods, kidneys, etc. So we're talking about the ability of every single cell in the body to detoxify. Now, you may not commonly think of that every cell has the ability to respirate, which means allow things in, allow waste out. Well, what happens if, your muscular tissue can no longer respirate or detoxify? What happens if brain cells no longer have that ability? And let me ask you, what type of cleansing program, what type of purification detox or foot bath or foot pads or whatever thing that is out there in order to supposedly rid your body of different toxins can actually truly help remove toxicity within a brain cell? And really, that's not even an accurate way of stating it. It's more helping the brain cell to do what it naturally should already be doing, which is to remove and detoxify waste products. So we're going to be discussing that this evening as well. Now, there's no way that medicine or the medical community can actually help with detoxification. In fact, they are really the #1 supplier of many toxins. Every type of medication that you take is a chemical. It further complicates the cellular matrix for proper detoxification, cleansing, and health of the body. So don't look to medicine to help your cells have the ability to detoxify, to cleanse pathways. And 90% of heavy metal detoxes, you hear a lot about heavy metal detoxes, maybe it's through a liver cleanse or even a colon cleanse. 90% of those, they are not effective. And 50% of those are not even safe. Now those figures, they don't come from me, they come from professionals who have researched these different kinds of detoxifications and cleanses for a very long period of time. And so just think about those numbers. 90% are not even effective. 90%, 50% of them can be very unsafe. Why is that? It's because many of the different kinds of herbs and detoxification methods force the excretion of those metals through your kidneys. And your kidneys, they're very sensitive. Those cells, very sensitive. And it can really damage and actually harm, sometimes permanently, the kidney function, your kidney function. And that can be a serious issue later on. Have you noticed how many dialysis centers are just kind of like popping up in every corner? Kidney issues are becoming a gigantic epidemic, regardless of the reason. It could be through diabetes or just maybe some kind of renal failure for some reason. So kidney issues are becoming more and more common, and I guarantee that the main reason, if not the reason, is because of the amount of toxins that we currently have within the environment, and so therefore within our bodies as well. Now, what about liquid or powdered zeolites? There's different companies selling these zeolites, and they're supposed to be a wonderful way of detoxifying the body. Well, they are not effective or safe. Why is that? Because many of these zeolites already contain heavy metals. That's what they're designed to do, is chelate, and so they already have a significant amount of heavy metals within them. There's only one type of zeolite that actually can be effective, does not contain different forms of heavy metals. And this is actually through analysis of a laboratory. You may have heard of Mike Adams. He has a natural health newsletter, naturalnews.com. Anyway, he has a very high-tech laboratory in which he's looked over many of these different types of products. And these zeolites simply are full of heavy metals and really should not be administered at all. What about IV chelation or DMPS or EDTA? Again, they are not safe because of what I just said as far as pulling toxicity through the kidneys. That is the main route of elimination, is through the urinary renal system, and they simply can do much harm to your kidneys, and they are not safe at all. One thing about toxins that it's very, very important to understand is that they create genetic expressions of disease. So they alter genes, all right? And that is extremely serious, because what if we have certain genes for cancer or certain genes for autoimmune diseases? Well, the one thing that can cause those to express, you see, it's important to understand that just because we may have a genetic propensity towards different diseases, it doesn't mean that we'll ever have those diseases at all. Something must flip that switch and cause them to express. And one of the main things that can, is toxicity. So it's very, very important that we have the ability and the know-how to help our body detoxify on a cellular level. That is true detoxification, real detoxification. And specific as far as gene expression, toxins are known to cause cancer cells. Now, that can happen through what is now called the Warburg effect. The Warburg effect. Cancer cells use only glucose and oxygen to create a fermentation process. That is not what normal cells do. Okay? So toxicity can create that change within normal cells to start reacting in that fashion, and that starts generating cancerous tumors of all kinds. So fermentation is a very bad thing when it starts happening within, well, really anywhere, except maybe alcohol. But certainly when fermentation occurs within the body, that is a very bad thing. So what types of toxins are we talking about? Well, I've already mentioned one, that's heavy metals. Heavy metals come through a variety of sources. If our parents were heavy metal toxic, guess what? We are heavy metal toxic. Okay? So if your mother had dental amalgam, a mercury filling, silver filling, even different forms of dental procedures and implants and things have different forms of metal alloys. Anyway, if she had those, then you have those. All right? And even if your father was metal toxic, it is quite possible that you are as well. That's why I said parents is at the outset. It's not only from your mother. There can also be an issue with the heavy metals in the mouth, that it creates galvanization, which means that there's an electrochemical reaction between two different metals within the mouth. If that happens, that's a very serious issue. It can create all kinds of health issues. You really need to get that found or discovered if you do have that and dealt with. The way to get that dealt with is to seek the help of a biological dentist who is trained in that. I can tell you that the average dentist on the street corner has no idea how to find that, probably doesn't even agree that it exists, but that individual is inaccurate. You do need to find a biological dentist that can help you with that particular situation. It's very, very serious. There can be heavy metals in common personal care products. Titanium dioxide. Certain people even don't do well with zinc and zinc sunscreen, so that needs to be tested upon the individual to make sure that they do okay with that. But keep in mind, zinc is still a metal. It can affect your body detrimentally, and if it's nanoparticles, which means extremely small particles, do you think that could affect your cells? Obviously, of course it could. So, we need to be extremely cognizant of the types of things that we're using and utilizing, because that's one of the ways that we can either have a tremendous amount of toxic exposure or mitigate it. Then the second common type of toxin is biotoxins, and one of those main ones that, especially in this area in South Texas, that we have to deal with is mold. Mold actually is an extremely ancient problem. In fact, it's talked about and ways of dealing with it, interestingly enough, in the Bible. Leviticus chapter 14, if you ever get a chance to look that over, you'll find it quite interesting that it is describing methods and ways of dealing with mold toxic exposure. If I remember correctly, like if there's a part of a wall that had growth of mold, that wall had to be completely destroyed and rebuilt. And if it came back again, and the wall that was removed that contained the mold had to be taken to a certain area that was not in the Israelite camp. And if it returned again, then the entire structure, the entire home or whatever it was, had to be completely destroyed, completely burned, and then rebuilt. So mold has been a serious problem. It's been a known problem of promoting disease, all kinds of different symptoms. In fact, mold and toxic exposure to mold can create all kinds of unexplained symptoms. It can affect, endocrine glands and heart, just all kinds of different systems within the body. So mold is a very common and very serious form of biotoxin. And we can see mold growing in the showers, in the bathtubs. If you have some mold growing, actually, and you treat it and it goes away and it never returns, that's actually mildew, not a big problem. But if it returns, that is mold, and that is a big problem that has to be addressed. So just keep that little trivia in mind. And then a third type of toxin, which I think it's probably far more serious than even mold. So that means it's extremely serious, because I think mold's a big problem. And what is that? It's glyphosate, it's Roundup. Roundup is, more specifically, the metabolite of Roundup. When a person, a human being, is tested, 100% of those individuals tested is found for metabolites of Roundup. It's called AMPA. That is bad. Why is that bad? Because of the things that glyphosate can create. Glyphosates, they chelate minerals out of the body. You need minerals, right? You need calcium, magnesium. You need all kinds of trace minerals, from iodine to manganese to vanadium to chromium, all kinds of different trace minerals. And this Roundup chelates. Chelate means it binds. So you have calcium floating around in the blood. You have the Roundup in that blood as well. It's going to be all bound to the calcium, which means the body doesn't have access to it, can't use it, and then it delivers it out of the body. So now you have a calcium loss, no matter if you're taking calcium or not. And since there are researchers who say that, hey, actually every cause of death we've ever found, no matter what disease the person may have died from, at the bottom out of it, at the foundation level of it, we found that they're deficient in minerals. And so taking that into account and that Roundup chelates minerals, it's a great, big, serious problem that we have to figure out how to prevent and protect ourselves from. The other thing that Roundup does, glyphosates do, is they make cell membranes stupid. So what's a cell membrane? Cell membrane is what holds the cell together. It's like a sac. And it makes them react in very stupid ways. So what does that mean? That means that your cells don't respond correctly. Maybe they fall apart. Maybe they don't regenerate correctly. It causes them to respond very stupidly. And then finally, as if that isn't enough, the glyphosate also transports heavy metals like mercury, lead, aluminum, etc. through the blood-brain barrier. Can you imagine that? It transports it through the blood-brain barrier. And finally, glyphosate, and there's several studies that are showing that it actually blocks the body's natural detoxification, cellular detoxification pathways. So not only does it take away your minerals, binds to heavy metals, passes it through the blood-brain barrier, makes your cells act stupidly and possibly fall apart and not be able to regenerate, but it also blocks the ability of your body to detoxify at all. I mean, if there was some poison to destroy humanity, I cannot think of a better one than that. Just think about how horrible that is. All right? It is truly poisoning every man, woman, and child in the world. Because 100% of the people tested have the metabolites of AMPA within their body. It's very sad. So let me show you this briefly. I have to go here. So you should be able to see on screen. This is from Dr. Stephanie Seneff. She has this study about glyphosate suppression of cytochrome P450 enzymes and amino acids, biosynthesis of the gut microbiome. So what that means is that Roundup actually suppresses an extremely important enzyme pathway for what's called phase 2 detoxification. So it is some mean, nasty stuff, and we have to figure out how to protect ourselves against it as much as possible. But not only that, we also have to find how to not get as much exposure as we possibly can. Eating organic foods is certainly one way to do that. So, what are the different phases of cell detoxification? So, I'm not talking about, helping certain systems eliminate or detoxify. One of the best cleanses or purification programs that I know of, it markets itself as basically being able to cleanse 7 different systems, which is far better than most, but still to have a true detoxification, because our cells respirate. They take nutrients in, they remove waste products. We're made up of close to 100 trillion cells. We have cells, brain, muscle, skin, all the different kinds of tissues that we have, all made up of cells. So we need to be looking at the ability of each one of those types of cells being able to remove toxicity. All right. So these are the different phases of that. First, there is a prep phase, and what that basically does is it prepares cells to go through a detoxification and also the downstream pathways. So that's where those 7 pathways are very important. They do need to be able to eliminate toxicity. But even before that, don't your cells really need to be able to remove toxicity throughout the entire body? So if you think about it, you just cleanse the highway. Let me use this example. let's say that you have all the freeways in a large city like Houston completely clear. There's no vehicles, but all of the exits are completely blocked, or all of the suburban roads are total traffic jams, bumper to bumper. Doesn't matter that the gigantic highways and are completely clear. No, it doesn't matter, because nothing can get out of the home in the first place. So that is the same idea of a true cellular detoxification. So you have 7 different systems that are clean. That's great, but your cells can't detoxify in the first place. So we clean out your colon. You don't have any poop in there, right? But so what? Your cells can't remove any toxicity that is already toxifying them to get rid of the toxins through that now clean colon. You see the problem? So that's what the preparation means. Then the second level, second phase is brain detoxification. All right. Think about the ever-increasing amounts, the epidemics of neurological diseases, dementias, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, on, and they are increasing rapidly. Pretty soon it's going to catch up to being within one of the 4 major causes of death within the United States. It's a huge, serious problem. So that's because brain cells are blocked from detoxifying, not to mention the 7 downstream pathways that the body would have to use in order to remove that toxicity. So the brain is extremely important to be able to detoxify. And it's just recently new research coming out that the brain actually has a form of a lymphatic system all its own, totally unknown within a couple of years ago. Can you believe that? So there's still systems and pathways that are yet to be discovered within the human body. I mean, just a couple of years ago, they didn't even know that the lymphatic system, or that the brain had a lymphatic system all of its own, a way of moving toxicity out of the brain. And then finally, we need to be able to remove toxicity from the cells within the body, the whole body itself. Let me wet my whistle here. So over here, I don't know you can see it well enough, but there's basically a schematic of how the process works. So you remove the toxicity within the brain cells, it goes into the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system cleanses the blood, moves that toxicity into the liver. It starts neutralizing it in the biliary system, the biliary ducts, which then moves those toxins into the intestines, and then the intestines do a great job of moving those toxicity completely from the body and into your toilet, which is where you want them to be in the first place. Well, actually, you'd like them to be anywhere near you in the first place, but if they are in you, that's eventually where you want them, right? Okay. So basically what happens is there is a cycle that continues on. So you're never going to get to a point that you never need to help detoxification of the cells, because there's too much toxicity within our environment, within the world today. It is important to eat organic, non-GMO as much as you can. The foods that contain the most Roundup, they are soy, corn, wheat, and sugar, and now commonly beets. All right, so soy, wheat, corn, sugar, those are full of Roundup. And what do I recommend to my patients? Do not consume grain. Do not consume sugars. Okay, so what am I helping them do? Besides remove inflammation that may be caused from sensitivities of those things, I'm helping them remove their sources of Roundup that cause genetic expression cancers, Alzheimer's, heavy metals in the brain, which is one of the reasons for Alzheimer's and neurological diseases. You see the point? Okay, so the cycle is we cleanse, we become toxified again, then we have to cleanse, and it's just a cycle that keeps repeating itself. Because food supply is full of Roundup, 100% of people tested, even if they've been vegan, organic vegan their entire life, their mother was vegan, their father was vegan, at the moment of conception they were, blessed by God, they're still 100% full of AMPA, all right, the metabolite of Roundup, glyphosate. So it's just important to keep in mind, because a lot of times I hear from patients, well, how long do I need to cleanse, or how long is this going to stay good? Well, a lot of times, like when I help patients, we have to just keep working at detoxifying the brain, the cells, the neurons, for 6 months or more. So we can actually test exactly what tissues, what cellular tissue needs to be detoxified, how it needs to be detoxified, and we can track at what point, okay, now it's time to move to the next tissue. No, wait a minute, we need to do longer in this tissue, or it's having a problem. So those are things that we can track while we're doing examinations and working with patients. Same thing for areas and tissues of the body. Sometimes the body has problems with certain cells, certain tissues, not to mention large pathways, like the hepatic system or the intestinal system or the urinary system. Okay. All right, so the different steps to take in order to do proper, true cellular detoxification is, number one, diet. All right, there's lots of different kinds of diets, but the ones that I've found most effective are, number one, a nutritional ketogenic diet. And there is research that is starting to come out that is actually showing that the body's natural cellular detoxification begins with the way that the cells start burning ketones. All right, so just keep that in mind. Other diets are using fasting in specific ways, not necessarily intermittent fasting. We're talking about a period of time of fasting. Those can be extremely helpful for detoxification. It's pretty amazing what can happen with the liver if you have a non-alcoholic fatty liver. Well, it doesn't really matter what time, but if you have fatty liver disease, within 12 to 15 hours of fasting, the liver starts removing the fat. All right, so that's just an example of how effective fasting can be when it's used correctly. Then I recommend certain forms of detoxification exercises. That's very important, because you have to know exactly what kind of exercises that can move toxicity through a certain point or a certain pathway, and there are exercises that are designed specifically for that. And then the third step is emotional detoxification. So, if you have toxic relationships, or a lot of stress around you, or you react stressfully most of the time or much of the time, then that creates all kinds of chemical byproducts and biotoxins that will toxify your cells, toxify your body, and you just won't get anywhere, because you'll constantly, chronically have these biotoxins affecting you. So emotional detox, and there are specific ways of doing that as well. Finally, we get to what we've basically been talking about. So these are the steps beforehand. We get to certain supplementation and phases of care for a true cellular detoxification. And then we have to work at removing exposure to these toxins. So, if we live in an environment that's mold and we can't get rid of it, then you literally have to move, okay? Or if you work in an environment that is moldy, you have to do something. Sometimes it's bad enough, it's affecting your health to the point that you're having autoimmune diseases from the mold exposure. You may have to quit that job and work somewhere else, or you may have to do certain forms of air purification units, that sit very close to you and cleanse the air that's in your immediate environment, so that you don't get as much mold exposure to the mold spores. There's different things that can be done, but it's definitely something that has to be taken into consideration. We have to look at things like personal care products. What kind of chemicals are in them? Are there heavy metals in them? Personal care products are notorious for chemical exposure, toxic exposure, no matter how costly they are. And oftentimes, even ones that are supposed to be natural contain things in them that end up being quite toxic. So keep that in mind as well. What I do is I just test on a patient the specific personal care products they may be using, see how the body reacts to it, and we go from there. So I don't necessarily recommend certain brands, because I found over 15 years of clinical experience that no matter how great a certain brand is, it may be really fantastic, that person to person, it's different. It could be just based upon their personal levels of toxicity, what the body can and cannot handle. Whatever the reason, it's really important. I just don't recommend a brand name, but we find which type of product is actually best for the patient. So those are just ideas for removing the exposure to the different kinds of toxins within our environment. Okay, so let me now go to see if there are any questions. Hold on a minute. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, that's basically going to handle it for this evening. If those of you watching, you think of something, if you watch it again or later on, just leave a comment, and I will, as I get notified of it, let you know what I think or answer the question as best as I may. So, one of the main things that we do in the clinic is we help individuals with cellular detoxification. Sometimes I may not call it that, but that's really what we're doing. You may hear now more and more about methylation and mitochondrial issues. Mitochondria are the engines within the cell, and collapsed mitochondria is the term that's being thrown about quite a bit now, and that is being shown more and more as being the true cause of degenerative diseases, chronic diseases, is that mitochondrial collapse. It used to be considered inflammation. Yes, inflammation, specifically prolonged inflammation, is a cause for disease. But what's behind that chronic inflammation? Well, certainly toxins are. And certainly if your cells are toxic, then eventually the mitochondrial function is going to at least be less efficient and could, if chronic, lead to collapse. So when we help restore the health of patients, basically what we're doing is a form of cellular detoxification. So when I go through a nutritional exam with a patient, we actually test every single organ reflex pretty much every single time that we have an office visit with them, because we want to see if the organ reflexes and the organ functions are improving or if they're not, what may be inhibiting it. You see, the idea is that if there is something, the body's designed to heal itself, all right? You don't need any medication, you don't need any supplement for the body to heal. That happens naturally if there isn't anything in the way of the body's ability to heal. If there isn't anything inhibiting the body to heal, it will heal. So if you're not healing, if you're having knee pain for the last 25 years, it means that knee's not healing. Something is inhibiting the body's process of healing that darn knee. So we have to identify what it is, and that's what we do through a nutritional exam, and that's what we do through a total health restoration program. The way that I work with patients is through a program. It is a process. Health doesn't happen with an event. It's like, oh my God, now I'm healed. No, that'd be great. You might be able to find, a revival tent somewhere that can do that. I can't, but real healing, true healing, is a process. All right. So we have a total health restoration program. It's a 6-month program. And when the patient commits to that program, well, guess what? I commit to you, and by the end of it, we're going to get a significant amount of healing by working together in that partnership. So if you're interested in regaining your health, if you're interested in having a program that takes you step by step, that monitors your body, your progress, and can find out what may be hindering that progress if that happens, until you can reach the amount of health that you're looking for, the level of vitality that you desire, then I invite you to an initial consultation. The initial consultation is designed to assess if the way that I work with patients and our total health restoration program is right for you. It's not for everyone, all right? Some people cannot commit to it because it is 6 months of a lot of work. It's 6 months of eating in a very specific way, and I very much require you to eat in the way that I recommend, and you have to take certain supplements for that period of time as well. So there's a commitment involved. Now typically, this initial consultation is $249. We work with you for quite some time with that initial consultation. It's about a 2-hour visit. So there's quite a bit of time involved. Make sure you set about that length of time out for your day for an initial consultation. Now, if you are referred into our practice through a patient, then you get $100 off as a referral comp. So it's $149 for an initial consultation at that point. But with these live presentations, I give you a very special offer, and that is if you would like to have an initial consultation, you can get one for a very special price of only $62, but you have to make an appointment by 11:59 p.m. this evening. And what I will do is, as soon as this presentation is finished, I will post the links where you see this video right now up above in the comment, where I comment about it. The links where you can do a online appointment for your initial consultation. There will be a special code to use. So when you go there to schedule it, you're going to see in the checkout system that there's a box that says discount code. You enter that special code and you will get an initial consultation for only $60. That's $187 off. And we can assess if we can really help you with our Total Health Restoration Program. Okay, so let me check one more time, see if there's any questions. There is not. All right, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. I'm Larry Brunellen, the host of the Natural Health Clinic live presentations. Stay healthy.